Thank you very much. Yes, it's really nice that we have the freedom to be here this morning, right? Enjoy each other's company and to study a little bit and to challenge each other and be transparent, and let's not take that for granted. You know, this week, the events of this week are a stark reminder of that. So we continue on. The section we're in is freedom from fear in Matthew 6. We have lots of scriptures today that we're going to talk through. We just touched on, I think, chapter 39. And if we look at those verses, I think that's important to put some context as a quick reminder. So if you look at Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21, it reads, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasure in heaven where moths and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And that puts kind of the point on a couple of lessons this morning. Well, where our heart is, our treasure will be also. And is it the second slide? Yeah, the second slide. We'll get to that quote in a minute. But religion can be defined as our ultimate concern. You know, what's our ultimate concern? Where is our heart? Where is our treasure? You can see the stuff on the big wheel here. Yeah, the big wheel. So there's a sports team on there. There's a flag on there. There's trophies on there. There's church building on there. There's money on there. An idol is usually a good thing that we make the ultimate thing. That's the quote. Can't read it from there. I can almost not read it from here. So what do we treasure above all else? So by definition, we can only have one thing of ultimate concern. It dictates the way in which we see the world, make our daily choices, and the way that we interact with each other.
Ultimately, the one thing that you really valuable that you really value will trump any other concern you have. I mean, it may take a while to get there, right? But ultimately, there's one thing that really dictates most of your decisions.
I just think there's things more around us, like what you were praying about, even, our week out. And they're so trivial to really what's important when you think about Ukraine and look at some of those pictures. And I mean, a very modern place, and you see buildings and apartment houses and stores that are just, bombed out, caved out, and how quickly something like that can happen. And just this past Sunday in Washington, the head soccer coach of boys and the girls, 55 years old, dropped dead. And I mean, when you look at him, he looks like he's about 35. But what's really important, and so many things are so trivial that we invest in, but yeah, what about the most important thing that's going to last forever? And even us, I mean, me, and there's things going on around us we don't be really paying attention to, but yet so many times it's so fleeting, and we're off to the next thing,
And I think you make a great point. And some of these items in this quote or this passage here can be used as a checklist, right? If we really want to find out what's our treasure, what's important in our heart, how do we see the world? Do we see the world as fearful, stressful, worrisome, angry? Right? How do we see the world? What are our daily choices? The choices I make every day, the smallest decision, that's reflected by what my treasure is, and how do I interact with others? Do I put people first? Do I put myself first? Am I dismissive? Am I helpful? Am I kind? That indicates to other people what our important treasure is, what our ultimate concern is. But are we willing to take a look at that and make it personal and decide what's important to us and make a change if we have to?
Yeah. And we don't use the word idol very often in our modern day world, but that's really what this is talking about. Back in the olden days, they would have built an idol or a place of worship for whatever their main focus is. We don't do that, but we have the same things. Can we admit that?
On a fun note, on the right side, what about the little pink box in there? Is that a C for a cub?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, I figure right now.
Well,
Those Cardinal fans.
That's right. That's what happens when the author's from Chicago.
That's right. This was the picture in the book, so we're not playing favorites.
And
Right?
Marie just showed it to me. I thought you guys would.
That's right. No Cincinnati, no Steelers.
That's right. We probably should have just like.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
Yeah, the baseball bat, exactly. So, Paul Tillich, theologian, states that everyone is religious. Everyone is religious because everyone has an ultimate concern. A concern which qualifies all other concerns as preliminary, and which itself contains the answer to the question of the meaning of life. So he kind of draws this conclusion here that what's important to you, your ultimate concern, is primary in your life. That's your meaning of life, whatever that ultimate concern is. And so we spend all this time, all these chapters, all this hot air talking about what should be our ultimate concern. But basically it comes down to how do we make our decisions? How do we live our days? How do we make the smallest decisions? How do we interact with others?
Yeah, Psalm 115 is a very interesting look at this concept. Now to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name be the glory because of your love and faithfulness. Why do the nations say, where is their God? Our God is in heaven. He does whatever pleases him. But their idols are silver and gold made by the hands of men. They have mouths but cannot speak, eyes but cannot see. They have ears but cannot hear, noses but they cannot smell. They have hands but cannot feel, feet but cannot walk, nor can they utter a sound with their throats. Those who make them will be like them, and so we all who trust in them. O house of Israel, trust in the Lord. He is their help and shield. O house of Aaron, trust in the Lord. He is their help and shield. You who fear him, trust in the Lord. He is their help and shield. The Lord remembers us and will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless those who fear the Lord, small and great alike. May the Lord make you increase, both you and your children. May you be blessed by the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The highest heavens belong to the Lord, but the earth he has given to man. It is not the dead who praise the Lord. Those who go down in silence. It is we who extol the Lord, both now and forever. Praise the Lord. But just a look at our God who does whatever he wants versus the man-made gods that can't speak, can't see, can't smell.
Their hands we cannot feel, feet we cannot walk. This puts it in perspective, right? All the things that we put our confidence on this planet, I mean, they're nothing compared to that. But we forget that a little bit, like we talked about last week. We forget that because sometimes it's what's in front of us, right? And sometimes it's what's easy. And sometimes it's what comforts us, right? Having a nice warm chair, or having, you know, a little bit of money in the bank account, or having a little bit of prestige, right? That can be comforting to us, but we can't make it our primary or ultimate concern.
So what do you think it means when he says, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven? What are treasures in heaven?
Well, that is what we talked a lot last week. Yeah. We talked about it's that relationship with God, right?
Okay.
Are we choosing the relationship with God and God himself above the treasures?
Do you think that's all of it? Relationship with God?
I think it has to start there.
I think that's, like we talked about last week, I think that's the primary. That's
right.
one of the primary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because again, it's the seek ye first concept, right? What are we seeking first? If we don't get that right, the other blocks or building blocks don't seem to fit. When we seek the wealth and the fame or the money and the whatever, then, you know, the hymn is just kind of fit in when and where we might need it, right? There's a block loose, so we'll put a little God around that to hold it in place, but the rest of the building doesn't have that. We can start with the relationship. The other things may or may not come, but we can be comfortable with where we are.
Well, I think the relationship with God leads to the relationship with people. right? I mean, as we take care of the vertical relationship, that helps take care of the horizontal relationship. Alan, you kind of made that point. We do things that get in the way of that relationship with God, which then gets in the way of relationships with people, right? And I can't have Christ through me, witnessing to other people because I've broken this relationship. I'm not storing my treasures in heaven. I'm not building that relationship. I'm, building wealth on this earth. I'm building my treasures here.
I think that's emphasizing, I think it's Matthew 25, it talks about separating the sheep from the goats, When I was sick, you visited me. When I was hungry, all these benevolent things that you do for, he says that basically you did it for the least of these, you've done it for me. So our relationship to other people, feeds back into that.
Yeah. And that's Mark 12 here, 12:20, and this time I'm going to actually put on the peepers here.
Okay, I'm good with
So I
that.
can read a little easier. So Mark 12, one of the teachers of the law came and heard him debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all the commands, which is the most important? Now, of course, interesting that it's a teacher of the law coming to Jesus and asking him, which is the more important, right? Did he know the answer? The most important one, answered Jesus, is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, with all your strength. The second is this: love the neighbor as yourself. There is no command greater than this. Then interesting. Well said, teacher, the man replied. The teacher is actually recognizing that Jesus.
Yeah, good answer. Jesus.
Good answer, Jesus. Yeah, always entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
But right, it's the horizontal, vertical combination that really is, I think, the basis of the treasure. But you're right, now, it is not ever just that. But it's got to start with that.
Well, so this whole idea of the kingdom of heaven, right? And the ethical mandate that Christ is handing out, right? So and he tells all these parables to illustrate that, right? So there's all these confusing stories, and then Acapella has the song "Go Tell John." You guys remember that song? Yeah. What did he say? Go tell John. Does anybody remember the song? It's a scripture that the lame have learned to walk, that the blind have learned to see. In other words, that's the sign that he's the Messiah. What does the Messiah do? Brings in the kingdom. And so there's this idea of restoration that occurs. And I forget all the little things, all the different specific things that he said, go tell John that I am the one, basically. So I don't know. It's not a simple answer, but it's just what are those treasures? What are those ultimate things that we're
Ultimate
pursuing?
concerns. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Well, I think overarching is this passage in Mark, right? Love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the steps to store up treasures. And then I think it becomes personal decisions after that. What does that mean? What does it mean to love God? Does that mean I stop and help people, and I serve people, in the process? And this is for us to wrestle.
Paul kind of addresses to the Corinthians in 2 Corinthians 4 too. I think kind of answers this a little bit. But he tells us, outwardly we're wasting away. Inwardly we've been renewed day by day. So we don't focus on the things that we can see, because those things are not going to last. They're going to be gone. So we focus on the things that are eternal. And so what, we need to get, what are the eternal things? What are the things that are going to last? And basically tells us the things that we see, all of this is going to be destroyed. So if it's going to be gone, we need to be focused on the things we cannot see. And I see your body, but I can't see your spirit. Your spirit is going to be eternal. Your soul is going to be eternal. And he tells us these bodies are going to be done away right in the next chapter. But yeah, we're going to have an eternal body, a new house, not made with hands, but made by God. We're not to be spirits without bodies. So it's the eternal thing that we need to be focused on. This other stuff is resources that God gives us and blesses us with to be used to bless others and be a blessing to us.
And I think it was last week, maybe it was a couple other weeks, we talked about when does eternity start? Eternity starts now. The kingdom of heaven is also not a future thing. It's also a now thing. It's how we live out some of these things now. The kingdom of heaven is here with us. So how can we be that kingdom of heaven to each other?
I think the next chapter talks about that a little bit too. So chapter 40, for those of you following along. But Jesus was serious in how we see the world will be determined by our heart. Right? So how we interact with the world, how we store up our treasures in heaven are determined by the condition of our heart. This was about what's inside of us, right? Being renewed. Are we being renewed? Or are we just focused on earthly things that are going to be destroyed?
Yeah, and so in the ancient world, I thought this, a good reminder. It was thought that sight was a process where light passed out of the body through the eyes, and the way we see the world is an indication of what is inside us, right? Instead of, so if you can read the, I guess the graphic here, ancient world, your heart is what dictates how you see the world. Kind of in our modern view, what we take in impacts our heart. But when he would have been reading, or when he would have been saying these things, it's what's on the inside is what dictates how you see the world. So,
and I like the difference in the goals, right? So the goal in the ancient view is to transform your heart, right? That's what this passage is talking about. But in the modern world, the goal is to transform your circumstances. That's very different.
very different.
So we try to influence our circumstances, change our circumstances, which leads to making things our ultimate concern that shouldn't be our ultimate concern, because we're trying to transform our circumstances rather than transform our heart to better deal with our circumstances.
Yes. And this seems to align with, a lot of what he's been talking about. It's the motive, right? It's not just that you haven't murdered someone. It's that you had hate in your heart. It's not that you've just committed adultery. It's that you had lust in your heart. It's not just that you whatever, it's what's in the heart, and that's what comes out. So it's the motive. We keep coming back to the motive. Why are you doing things?
So the last line here, we either see the world from a religious perspective, light, or a wicked perspective, darkness. And that influences our heart, it influences our actions and our decisions.
And interestingly enough, there's also an economic context to these words. The same words that he used here, used other places, are translated as either generous or stingy or grudgingly. Interesting.
So words like healthy and full of light and unhealthy and darkness translated differently.
So we never like to hear this, but sometimes how we handle our wealth is also a direct reflection of our hearts. That's tough.
So are you saying that this could possibly read the eye is the lamp of the body? If your eyes are generous, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are stingy, your whole body will be full of darkness?
Yes. So there's a health context to that word, and there's also I guess an economic context to that word.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it, right? Which I think is a clue toward, right, sometimes becomes the most important concern of ours is our wealth, right? And so how we handle that reflects how our heart is transformed.
Yeah.
There's a big message in the word grudging.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're giving, but we really don't want to. And so we justify, well, I gave, but we're being reminded here that that's not the way that we are to live.
Absolutely.
That kind of reminds me of a scene from the movie, where somebody's grudgingly turning something over and the other person tries to grab it, and just, won't let it go, and then finally let it go, right? It's grudgingly, right?
And again, this all goes back to our motive, right? What is that motive? You can't tell when that widow gave her 3 mites, right? But that was everything. Jesus had to point that out to them, that lady who just gave the equivalent of what, of 3 cents, gave more than anybody else you saw today, because he could see the motive.
Because otherwise I wouldn't have noticed.
I wouldn't have noticed.
It would have shown up on the balance sheet, somebody turned in 3 cents.
3 cents. Great. What do I do with pennies, right?
Mhm.
Is that worth going to the bank even to deposit? I mean, you could just see, the leaders, just throw it in the trash can, right? You can't buy anything with a penny nowadays. But to her, it was something different.
So it makes you ask, where's her church?
Right.
And the whole thing with all of this, Jesus, when you look at this teaching, he's not just skipping all over the place and getting this, but all of it flows, because this part flows from where's your treasure?
Where's your treasure? That's right.
Yeah, and I think her treasure could have been trust. Right? She trusted God. He told me to give, I gave. This is all I have. I trust him to take care of me. That was her treasure.
It was definitely eternal. It wasn't physical, because it gave everything she could have.
And that's where, I wish the Bible told the next part of the story in so many of these, right? What happened to that lady? Did she have any further struggles, or was it sunshine and rainbows? I guess rainbows, there needs to be some rain. But yeah, I mean, like, what is that next step? Does that mean she never had a struggle again? Probably not. Or just like with some of the people he healed, right? Does that mean their problems went away? Does that mean they were accepted? Did they trust Jesus after that? You really wish we had some of the what next stories, and we don't.
But I think sometimes even with that, I think, Paul said, rejoice in the Lord always. And I say rejoice. So he's telling us, so that Paul rejoiced for the rest of life and never had any more troubles.
No more trouble.
Or anything like that. If you look at his life, he had tons of struggles and all, but still it goes back to what you were saying a while ago, guys. And it goes back to what's in the heart, how we look at our world. Are we looking at the world as through eyes of light, through Jesus in us, or are we looking through eyes of the world and this culture and its darkness, and we're seeing things as darkness? And that helps us to either have a heart that's full of joy that nothing can rob. It can rob happiness, but it can't rob joy. And so we have people that are rejoicing, with people like the widow that was able to give everything she had and trust God, not thinking down the road. So we're thinking down the road, well, what happened to her? Because I want to know.
Yeah. Did this work out?
Before I do this.
Before I do this.
Before I
Did this
do
work
this.
out? Exactly.
That's right.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I told him we were talking about contributions and donations and stuff, and somehow I made the point, I said, well, God doesn't need our money, and he can do whatever he wants, right? Because he was talking about kind of splitting hairs and stuff, and he was kind of floored by that. I said, this is about us. This is about our trust and our relationship and our transformation. He doesn't need, my $50 for this charity or whatever I'm going to do with it. He can probably work something out without my $50. But that's, the transformation. That's our heart.
And he chooses to use things through us. And the last part here, right? We've all heard that God loves a cheerful giver. But when you give, are you giving grudgingly or with conditions, quid pro quos, right? Or are we truly giving out of gracious love and freedom? That's hard. That's not something we do naturally, especially at a young age. I think that may come a little easier later on.
Probably a period where it gets easier and then it gets harder.
Yeah. But yeah, one way to really look at your heart is when you see something you don't understand for the first time. What's your quick initial reaction? What does your heart tell you in a lot of those cases? So yeah, our heart is the way we see the world.
So another chapter that builds on this.
Yes, they just do.
Yes, they do. So Just kind of reinforce and then take us to the next step. If Jesus was serious, then we cannot live with divided loyalties. Cartoon says, I think you're in my seat. Right?
This is one of my favorite drawings. Scary, but favorite.
So Moneybags is sitting on the throne, right? With a dollar sign, it's a cash coming on top. Your religion is a reflection of what your ultimate concern is in life. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Our eyes are either healthy or unhealthy and are a direct reflection of your heart. And now you come to no one can serve two masters. You can't have two ultimate concerns. You can't have two jobs. You can have two jobs, rather. You can even have two wives. Okay. But you can't have two masters.
That was a joke, by the way.
Maybe you should have done it.
Yeah. But I mean, that kind of, right? There's a lot of two things we can have. But at the end of the day, can we really have two masters? And I, jokingly, right? If you had two wives, you'd probably have two masters. But we're driving the point home, right? Two masters. Do we think of life in that perspective? Do we think of life in that perspective? My wife's not here, by the way,
Yeah,
and
so-
she's not online. So feel free to tell her that you're okay.
You have to wait till she watches this before you post it.
Did you unhook it or something?
No internet at their house, so it could be all right. Any comments on this? Any thoughts?
I think a lot of people might not, I mean, Christians, they think God is their master, and I don't think they even give any thought to other things being their master.
Yeah, because it's kind of the stamped answer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, God's my master.
Right.
That's it. But what do our actions dictate? How we interact with other people? Where is our ultimate concern? What is our fear around? That's kind of a big indicator, right? What's our master? What's our fear around? Is my fear around that, my job might be lost? Or is my fear around what's going on in the economic climate of the world? Is my fear around, my family and dynamics? I mean, that's a big indicator.
401k.
401k, retirement, right?
That's right.
And also, what's the difference? You guys were talking about money before. What's the difference between being like a saver versus a spender? Now, a spender would they just spend money freely.
Yeah,
But
might not
then-
be your mom.
But then a saver, are they more greedy because they don't want to spend what they have so that things last?
And we'll actually get to that type of thoughts here in a few slides, assuming we get there today.
I think we might.
Yeah, so divided loyalties. Divided loyalties. We cannot serve two masters. And who are those two masters? Right? A reminder, God is a jealous God. This is from Exodus 20, right? He wants to be number one in our lives. And does he deserve to be number one? We normally would say yes, but then is that where we put him? Right? And what does it really mean when God is a jealous God? When we think jealous, we think usually in a very negative, jealous, hoarding type situation.
It really just means priority.
Priority.
Right? It means top of the list. Have no one else before me.
Anyways, God is willing to fight for us, because we're created in his image and he wants to bless us. And I mean, he's willing to fight for us to help us to understand truly who he is.
Well, I think the whole generous and greedy things versus whatever that was, 19 to 22, sure makes verse 24 make a whole lot more sense. At the end, when it says you cannot serve both God and money. Or man, but it's like this whole passage is subtly or directly, whatever you want to say it, addressing, how we relate to money, Because that, the generosity you're extending is my relationship to money,
Yes.
right? And if that's a direct correlation with my relationship to God, right? So I think that's basically what we're saying, right? You can't say you relate to God in one way and then relate to money in the opposite way. I mean, if I could put that in balance.
Exactly. No, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a song, or maybe it's a poem, I'm not sure, but love and money are just the opposite, right? Love blossoms when you give it away. A lot of times for us, love or money, right, only begins to grow for us when we keep.
Would you like to sing a song, Eric?
No, I can't actually remember what it is.
Love is like a lucky penny. If you hold it
No.
tight, then you won't have any.
That's
Give
not,
it away, and you'll have plenty. You'll end up having more.
that's not the one I was thinking of.
Like an old, you don't know that song? That's
No,
like
I
an old
don't.
version, like maybe this song. Yeah.
That's a southern.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes the point. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are examples of our masters today? Is it money just disguised? King James, like you said, uses the word mammon, which is defined as worldly riches. So worldly wealth. It's a little bit more than just money, right? It's more than just dollars. It's more than just crypto. It's worldly riches. Right? It's
Yeah.
worldly comfort, physical comfort.
Yeah. Exactly. And do we end up with divided loyalties? This, am I jumping to this one too fast?
No, it's good.
This is the one that always worries me. Do we end up with divided loyalties or masters because we don't count the cost to begin with? And I think this is a really interesting tie-in to Luke 24.
Luke 14.
Sorry, Luke 14.
Mhm.
That's a lot. When Jesus is talking about the cost of being a disciple. So the large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, saying, this fellow began to build and was not able to finish. Or suppose a king was about to go to war against another king. Will he not first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose one coming against him with 20? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. So as American Christians, most of the time when we come to Christ, what have we had to give up? What cost do we have to give up for that next step? It's very different in many countries where when they become a Christian, there is a clear loss of status, family, etc. And in those situations, they truly have to count the cost of what it's going to be. We don't have that issue. But how many times have we've accepted Christ, we start down that road, and all of a sudden, those loyalties that maybe we didn't address appropriately at the beginning start to pull us in different directions. And that's when we find out that we have such divided loyalties or different masters that we're having to deal with.
Yeah, all because we didn't count the cost, which kind of ties back to what Teresa's saying, right? Spenders versus savers, let's put it in that context. Either one's probably not bad, right? But it's what's at the core of it. Am I saving because I'm fearful, right, that something might happen to me and I need worldly things to protect me versus, no, I'm just saving because I'm a saver, and that just allows us to do things for God's kingdom, to contribute more, to be a little more free, to not be so dependent on a job that I can't serve God's kingdom because we have saved a little bit. And I think either one is not right or wrong, but it's what you do with it.
We do have a comment online. Okay.
Here we go. This is from, get there, Dean Kennedy. You're walking on a road away from the city. You have lived your whole life because an evil regime is about to take it over. What is important? Everything you have is left behind with clothes on your back and your family. You may never have anything again. What is important in that moment? Right. I think he's kind of making an example of what's going on in the world right now. You have to leave everything behind. And you grab the most important things to you. And the relationship with God can't be left behind. Okay, we're out of time. Thank you very much. Enjoy your Sunday.